Yes, 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 yes. I am live. Hey, my morning stars, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. I know this is a little unusual, but come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. Andre, hey, sweetie. Hey, Andre, would you tell everybody to come on over here? Because I'm doing the show live today. The show that I did yesterday, I'm doing, you know, that's coming on right now. No, no. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy. Whew. Okay. Hey, 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 hey. Yep, yep. It's gonna be a little unusual. I'm gonna do the Facebook Live show now. Okay. Let me see where everybody is. Okay. Let me make sure Daryl is up. Yeah, did you get it? Okay, I don't see you though. No. No, you don't have to be on camera, but you should be backstage. I don't see you. You could you might have the wrong. Huh? I sent you one link. Okay, let me send you another one. Let me send you this. The second is the first hour link that you should have. Does it say first hour? Call Chip Gibbons. Let's see. Hey, hey, Bernadette. We're about to get started very, very shortly. Very, very shortly. Very, very shortly. Oh, Chip. Oh, good morning. I wanted to make sure I just sent you a link to the first hour, which is the wrong one. The one that I sent you is the one that I sent you yesterday is the one that you need. Okay? Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye. Absolutely. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. Hello? No link? Oh, okay. Oh, let me do that again. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. Okay, Dwight.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, thank you. I thought I sent you the first hour link last night. So let me see. Let me make sure I've got this. Sent. Okay. Okay, Daryl. Okay, great. And I'm sending it to you again. Let Miss Dr. Gibbs know.
What's up, Daryl?
Hey, good morning, Dwight. How you doing?
Not bad.
I've already been out for a walk with my dog, saw two little Bambis outside, and of course he wanted to chase them.
Mm.
You saw two what?
Two little, deer, little fawn. And he was just amazed by them and decided that they were
Okay,
too peaceful, too peaceful.
Dr. Gibbs, I resent you a link. Could you check that one? That's the one that I resent that you should come up on. I don't know. Well, look at the one that I literally just sent you.
What do you think is going to happen with the litigation today?
Oh, okay, because
Dwight?
I don't
Which
have it on
one?
the page.
With the immunity?
Oh, I think they're gonna give them limited immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
They're not gonna have a choice.
okay.
It would only
All
make
right.
sense.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, they give him. They'll probably give him something like
Yep. Yep.
things that don't
Mm-hmm.
directly
Carol and
conflict of
Dwight
interest with
here.
the election process or the State of the Union per
Mhm.
se, but particularly for foreign relations,
Yeah.
Okay, that's not
and some domestic tranquility
ESPN.
issues, I think.
Again. Okay. All right.
Because I
I
told
think
you the presidency is already a criminal enterprise.
right. Mm.
Okay. You
You
said
couldn't have any foreign policy now.
now. Okay.
I mean, when you start taking out the heads of other countries,
With impunity.
right? Mm.
What do you think is going to happen?
Yep. It's like the fourth time I've said.
Well, I think that it should be an interesting opinion
Okay.
that's written because I think
Okay.
that part of it should address when a president is in office. Part of it should address when post
Oh,
presidency,
okay.
and then I think that they have to set it up to make a
Don't
decision
worry about it. Don't worry about
that
it.
would
Don't
require a hearing from the trial
absolutely.
court
Thank
to
you.
determine if it's
All right.
something that's covered
Everybody,
by the immunity clause or not.
I am sorry. I'm going to get going because we've had some technical issues. Dr. Gibbs, when he's not in his office, his computer doesn't work as well and his connection doesn't work. So there we have it. But let us begin. Okay. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you all, but I'm running late. Okay. So we are on in, let me get up to 15 because this will run. Okay. We're good. 40 seconds. Hey, everybody, this morning we're going to be doing something a little different because I wanted to be with you live. I didn't want to bump up against what I have going on YouTube right now, but I tell you, yesterday we did have a wonderful conversation about the debate. And I encourage you to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel so that you can see it. They're playing it on AM 950 radio right now. But we had some wonderful conversations yesterday, and we are up in 5, 4. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Yep, yep, yep. Live and in person. It's really the Facebook show, but this will be on AM 950 radio. First thing in the morning from 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. It's a joy to be with you today on July 1st. Happy 4th of July in advance, everybody. Can't wait to talk with you today about Julian Assange, that case. Someone who was in the courtroom with him, Chip Gibbons, of course, our brother beloved from Defending Rights and Dissents, and the curator of the Dissenter online magazine, Kevin Gosztola, no stranger to this show. We'll be talking with them in the next hour. But first, let's talk about this SCOTUS case that everyone is anticipating. What does it mean? What does it mean? Is this personal immunity for the president? Is it presidential immunity? Where do the lines blur? And are we really being honest about what it really takes to be the president of the United States and to be in power? Daryl Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, Dwight McKee, senior advisor to Cornel West, and the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, a tremendous education project based here in Chicago, but it is of national significance indeed. There was a documentary debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival about this project, and we cannot wait until more and more of us can see it. Sending much love to you, Shirley Carter, and Sandy Hicks from Detroit, and Andre from here in Chicago, and Bernadette. Everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. Let's get this started. Like and share, like and share, like and share. And of course, please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, and share the show. And of course, go to Santita Jackson and Friends. That's my Facebook page. That's the only page where I can accept friends, everybody. Please go there and become my friend. Be my friend. Be my friend. The community's really built up, and it's all because of you. But let's first talk about immunity. What is presidential immunity? And what does it really mean, everybody? What decision will be rendered by the Supreme Court today? More than that, I think that a lot of these cases, Attorney Daryl Jones, we just hear that the president's been charged, that he's in court, and we really don't know what it's about. You remember yesterday for our show, we were talking about, we hear routinely, Trump is a rapist, Trump is a rapist. And as a former prosecutor, I had to ask you, wait a minute, it's not that I'm splitting hairs. I want to be precise, right? I don't want to label someone. I wouldn't want to be labeled incorrectly, right? And so you said, no, this was not rape. This was sexual assault. One is a criminal offense. One is a civil offense. So I think that was a very important distinction to make while we're having these discussions, right? So immunity, presidential immunity, what is it? What is before the court today? And what will we get this decision today? Or can they kick this down the road till the fall?
Well, thank you, Santita, for such a simple question. Such a simple question. We'll start at the end and move to the beginning. Can they kick it down the road further? Yes, they technically could. They could say, we're not going to make a decision on this now. We're going to hold on to it, and the next term we'll make a decision. We'll take it into consideration. I don't believe that's going to happen. What in all likelihood is going to happen is this. The question that's before the Supreme Court right now is whether or not a sitting president has immunity, or a post-president has immunity for actions that were taken while he was in office, that were part of the office of the president, carrying out the duties of the president of the United States. Is he immune from any type of criminal liability for anything that happened during that period of time? And, what I suspect this Supreme Court will do is the following. And before we go into the deep analysis, let's start with practically what they have done. What this court practically has done is to not make a decision regarding the criminal immunity of the president, former President Trump, because they wanted to slow walk this case. They knew there were other criminal cases that were pending. They know that Judge Chunkin in DC has a case from which this flows, that there was a decision by Judge Chunkin that there was no presidential immunity to cover the criminal acts post-presidency of a U.S. president, that there was a decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals in the DC Circuit also underscoring what Judge Chutkin had decided. The appeal then went to the U.S. Supreme Court, where this court decided that not so fast, we don't want you to put the case on trial that quickly. So we're going to slow it down, and we'll make a decision in our time when we think we're ready, which in essence is what former President Trump has been after all along, is just trying to buy time.
If you don't mind, let me ask you this, because I want to take this apart. Is this about President Trump, or is this about the presidency? Because It seems to me this could have wider, deeper implications, particularly given the decision that was just made about the January 6th cases. Mm-hmm. Some of that was really vacated, right? Thrown out. And so help us to understand because I think that what we really need to understand, Attorney Darrell Jones, is what we're looking at. And as a former prosecutor, this is when we bring charges, and I kind of expected the judge to throw this out. I mean, you actually had to deal with that.
Right. So in essence, Santita, what you're looking at isn't just the case of the United States versus Donald J. Trump. It's really decision with regarding the presidency. So it's both together. It is both him as the personal person that's involved in this, as well as the office of the presidency. And the question that the court will be answering is what level, if any, of immunity does a sitting president or a former president hold with regards to criminal responsibility and criminal liability.
Will they be answering it about him or the presidency? I mean, just literally, is the case solely about him? Are they going to be able? Or will they split the baby?
I don't suspect they're going to split the baby, particularly with this particular court, because of the conservative brand that it brings with it. I suspect that what they're going to do is that they're going to say there is a level of immunity that exists for the office of the presidency while a person is serving as president. Post-presidency, there should be no immunity. That's a no-brainer. I mean, there should be nothing that's there. During the period of the presidency, the question would then become, how do you define that period of the presidency? What is the post-presidency period? How does it begin? At what point does it start? And the question then will become the question of immunity while a person is serving in the office of president. So what I suspect this court will do, and what I think is probably the appropriate thing to happen in this matter, is that the court should decide that, post-presidency, there shouldn't be any immunity except for things that happen during your presidency, during the period that you were, under the oath of office and serving as the active president of the United States. Post-presidency, there should be no immunity. You're just a citizen like everyone else. What this court will probably set up is the requirement that there be a hearing to make the determination as to the immunity and the availability of immunity of a president. And that's what I suspect they're going to do here, is not make the decision as to whether or not former President Trump was immune at this point in time with the J6 case, but they will require that the lower level court, the trial court, hold hearings to make determinations as to whether or not there are any immunities that apply. Why is that significant? It's significant because what the former president has been after in all of these cases has been delay, delay, delay. And what this sets up is the road for yet another delay. Because once they set up the road of saying that there needs to be a hearing to make a determination as to whether or not there's any immunity to the presidency that to the defendant president, former president, that applies, that also will open up the possibility for them to be able to take appeals from that hearing. that intermediate appeal go to the intermediate appellate court to the Supreme Court once again for determinations. So it lays a groundwork for further delays, which is what the former president has been after in all of his cases, Santita.
So what do you expect to happen today? Because quite honestly, it seems like the disposition of the court, but it's not just this court, it's all of them. Amy Coney Barrett has been voting with the liberals some of the time. And, the people who you expect to be hard right, swing left on some cases, it seems that they are more nuanced. Is that the nature of the law? Is that the nature of the court? You tell me, you're the lawyer.
Yeah, I think that the nature of the position, right, would hold that there's certain principles that you hold on to, certain philosophies that you hold on to. And I think that when it comes to Justice Kavanaugh or Justice Amy Coney Barrett, or to much less extent, Gorsuch, Justice Gorsuch, that what you see happening is that there are times when there's something that just completely rubs against what they stand for and what they're built upon and what makes legal sense to them. And when it gets to that point, that's when you start seeing some of the separation and them going along with philosophies that were not necessarily in line with what I will call their party's philosophy, the super conservative, ultra conservative philosophy. So oftentimes you'll see that happen. You'll see them break off. But I think that in this instance, the conservative majority has already given former President Trump a partial victory, because you got to remember when the question came up for various allegations and cases that were brought, decisions were handed down by this court relatively quickly. When the question was whether or not the former president could be kicked off the ballot as he was in Colorado, it took the court 15 days to make that decision. So there's certain pieces where they're already showing favoritism toward him by quickly deciding cases. In this instance, this is a quick decision. This isn't a complicated call, in my estimation. And rather than making a quick decision, they decided to give him the benefit of being able to, have the time to go through debates, to do all this other stuff, to campaign, to try to get closer to being to elected office, that before any type of decision here is put in place. In effect, what they probably have effectively done by slow walking this and delaying this is saying that the November election will occur before the trial in any of these other cases. And if he is elected president, he then will be able to go back and try to undo any charges that are there, to dismiss the cases that are against them. The only one or two that may be questionable is what he can do with Fani Willis in Georgia in the state level cases, because they're not covered by the president nor by federal government. So, that's just sort of the groundwork of what this court has already laid in place. I suspect that what they'll do is they're going to require some type of intermediary hearing with immunity determinations to further slow the prosecutions of the former president down. That's what I think most of us are looking forward to seeing come from this court.
Should they vote yea or nay? What will they have decided today?
Today, they will have decided whether or not there's an immunity that exists for a president for criminal cases. They will also decide whether or not really what the process will be for determining whether presidents and former presidents have any level of immunity with regards to criminal responsibility. That, in essence, is what will be decided today. Again, I believe that the big decisions they'll make will say we'll send it back to Judge Chunkin for further hearings to make a determination of whether or not the actions that are being alleged as criminal are outside the scope of what be protected actions of the president.
Everybody participated in the conversation. My morning stars are here. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Samantha, how you doing? Sandy from beautiful Detroit, Detroit. Of course, I've missed you too. And so we're trying something a little different because we wanted to interact with each other, and I've missed you too. But I didn't want to bump up against what we're doing on AM 950 radio. I want to respect that process. And as we go on to other stations, which will happen within the next few weeks, we're going to go live. But I mean, please pay attention to what we talked about yesterday, because Daryl, I think you agree, we had quite robust discussions, and I don't want you to miss anything. But let's talk about this immunity case, because, and of course I have to go to Dr. D, brilliant social scientist Dwight McKee, and ask him really, I guess, the socio-political question, because as you well know, Daryl Jones, these decisions do happen within a political context. I mean, even Brown v. Board of Education happened in the post-World War II era when Black people threatened not to go. And I can't imagine that was not on the justice's mind. They were not going to tell Black folks who were about to not to go into a world war, no, we're not going to desegregate these schools. It's just, I think we have to look at all of these things. But there are two different books that I thought were really interesting. One of which I've read, one of which I've just received. The Black Book of Communism is from Harvard University Press in 1997. Attorney Daryl Jones, Dwight McKee. It estimated that 100 million people, this book came out in 1997, 100 million people have been killed by direct or indirect actions of our government. Now, a new book by David Michael Smith that just came out in 2023, Endless Holocaust, Mass Death in the History of the United States Empire, estimates, get this, that number is now 300 million people. They say that we're the most murderous empire in history. Painful to read it, but those of us who come from the freedom fighting movement, it's not tough to understand, particularly when you know that King Leopold, for example, even though that was, their project, the Belgian project, that was 20 million. No one talks about 20 million Africans being killed by this European power. I mean, it's appalling, but it happened. So, Dwight, what do you think about this immunity question? I mean, should a president be immune? What do you think Trump is asking for?
Well, I think that this is to deal more with the presidency than with Trump per se. And I think that the ultimate conclusion would be that immunity is covered by impeachment, the impeachment process. And anything that is up for discussion or anything controversial should be dealt with by impeachment. Other than that, there is an inherent immunity in the office. And I think the reason they have to go there is because the presidency at a foreign relations level is basically a criminal enterprise. And he is the head of a military who is stationed all over the world, basically for the most part, at their own discretion. And they operate as independent principalities all over the world. And so they're making the decisions about world policy and foreign policy without the dictates of the governments that they are connected to, which means that he and the military establishment are basically their own dictatorship. And so when they make decisions about dropping bombs or assassinations or, invasions, they are doing so at their own discretion, and it makes them vulnerable and liable for lawsuits, or like Netanyahu has gone through, he has been designated as a war criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a guy like Biden, who basically has been supporting that, it makes them as liable to become war criminals as Netanyahu has, which is why the United States works so hard to avoid joining the international,
The ICC.
yes, that's right, courts
Right.
of justice, and why they work so hard to veto, they have veto power in the United Nations. So when they're accused of being war criminals, they basically can circumvent that. And so when you're dealing with an empire, they have to really have imperial power to remain in office. And to have imperial power, you have to have a certain level of, the emperor has always had a certain level of immunity. And so I think that's what it'll come down to is they will say that, that the president's crimes are covered by the impeachment process rather and give him almost absolute immunity at some levels.
Do you think is this personal for him, or is this about the presidency?
This is about presidency. He will benefit from it because he has been the president and will probably be the president again. But this is about the office because I mean, when you get past him, you open it up. Can Obama be sued by Gaddafi's family for his assassination, or can Bush be sued by Saddam's family for his assassination? I mean, the presidency is historically an assassination machine.
Mm.
Uh, and so, I mean, every one of them become liable and vulnerable for lawsuits based on what they've done historically under the guise of operating or protecting American self-interest.
Well, so what do you expect the court to say today, Dwight?
But what I said, that these things are covered by impeachment, the impeachment process, that those areas where the presidency should be challenged or should be indicted, all of those are covered by the impeachment process. And
Do
that
you?
other than that,
Mhm.
he has almost absolute immunity, even where he has attempted to overthrow the government, which is subjective, that the impeachment process is already in place to deal with those kind of issues.
How will this impact this decision? How do you see this impacting the election? First you and then Daryl.
How do I see it impacting the election?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it will impact the trials first because the trials that they have him under is where he benefits in that it suggests that these trials have most of these trials have no standing. And it ties the process up long enough that if he becomes a president, he can pardon much of these situations already. Much of what they have been discussing, he was already impeached for and found not guilty. And so, it will end up covering all of those immediate trials, I think, that he's involved with. Um, what was your second question?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out, because I think I'm trying to find out what is being decided here, because people have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dwight McKee and Attorney Jones. There's a lot of conflating going on here because we've made this personal, but you and Attorney Jones are saying, wait a minute, this is really about the presidency and the nature of it. That's why I pulled that information from those two books. When you go to Africa now, um, there is a lot of, and when you go throughout the global South, for example, which is now on the ascendancy, I think we can all agree with that. As we watch the emergence of the BRICS currency that is now becoming a standard of currency all around the world. I mean, as we see so many of the world's resources are there. Um, they view America and our presidents as war criminals. They do. And if they could get them before the ICC, they would. The pushback that the Global South has had with the ICC is they're like, you're only coming after me, the black and the brown people, but you're leaving the European powers alone. I mean, what gives? And so I'm trying to figure out what it is that we should be looking at right now. I mean, because there will be a lot of elation, because the corporate media are going to spin it as a win or a loss for Trump, instead of looking at what this means about our presidency and how presidents conduct themselves, and how this impacts not just policy, but the safety of our troops, for example, overseas, because they have to deal with a lot of hostilities. No one ever talks about that. No one ever talks about that, how this endangers them, because oftentimes they get there and they get so frustrated because they find that the democracy that they're protecting is called Chevron. It's called an American corporation who need their offices and their oil fields protected. And that's what our troops are doing overseas. Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, because you get over there, that's what you see, that's what they're doing, right? You see, that's what they're doing. So, I'm trying to find out what is really going on here. I mean, what do you think is going to happen with the January? Because this really does have an impact on January 6th. What does that mean? And and to your understanding, Dwight, what are the January 6th charges about? I mean, 2 of them were thrown out, which Daryl, we must admit, Dr. D predicted that would happen. That's what we want to know. Put on that beanie, Karnak, because you predicted it, and we were all a little suspicious. We said no, they can't do that. You said no, they're going to.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That's exactly what Dwight had said, was that he suspected that, and I think he said that he thought that the jury would not convict on any of these. I don't think any of us saw the court stopping it before it even got to a jury to make that type of determination with regards to the obstruction of law charges that went on in here. So it I think it's kind of bizarre with regards to the way that the court constructed their argument about the obstruction of justice charge, if you will, in this situation. But one of the other things that Dwight lifted up that was really interesting was when he was comparing the impeachment versus the immunity, and saying that the court would say that the impeachment process is what should be in place, so that the immunity process, if I understood him correctly, didn't really need to be the factor, because there was an impeachment process that was already in place that could deal with any of the actions of a president that's sitting. And it's an interesting argument to make, because of course it truly politicizes the process, because when you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about charges being brought by the House of Representatives and then a trial being held by the U.S. Senate, and all the politics that are played within that framework. But I think that, if we were to look at this on the case that's before the court and using that analysis, this would have been a situation where former President Trump had lost an election, had not been removed from office yet, because they were in the process of certifying the state votes. So the former president, or the President Trump at that point, is still in power, soon to be removed from power within whatever the days are that President Biden would take over. The question then would become, if it's at the end of this process, what impeachment are you going to do? The Congress is going to impeach the outgoing president. I just don't think there's much teeth that's there. There's nothing there for the court to sink its teeth into, nor for Congress at that point really to sink its teeth into. And because of that, I think it's really going to be incumbent on this court to make a decision with regards to the immunity. The question is, at that point that he incites the riot, that he incites the insurrection, is he immune from that criminal liability for trying to disrupt, dismantle, and destroy democracy and take people's votes from them. Is he criminally liable for that? That's the question that the court's really going to be deciding with regards to whether or not he carries this type of immunity, even while he's president, technically at that point in time.
Well, why aren't other people on the hook? Before I, because a couple of people have questions for you and for Dwight, because the person, the officer, the legislator on the Hill, because there's a hierarchy on the Hill, you know that so well. Who's in charge of what? According to reports, Trump had asked for 10,000 National Guards. He was denied. And Nancy Pelosi said, no, we don't need any extra backup, even though 3/4 of the Capitol Hill police were not there that day. And then the person who actually oversees the Capitol Hill police, Mitch McConnell. And no one has held them accountable for what they did not do. I mean, for years, they've been saying Trump is a threat. Trump is a threat. He's belligerent. He riles his crowds up. I mean, and look, he does rile his crowd up. I mean, he has that power and he does not shy away from it. But they also had the power to have more police power on that day. And you know what it was like to watch that scene. It was like, where are the police? This is nuts. I have to tell you, this was one time I was glad my brother was not up there. At least one of them. Now I got another set of worries because I saw, because it looked dangerous, and it was. Everybody who was there said, I didn't know if we were going to live through this. So, I mean, talk to me. I mean, why aren't other people on the hook for this?
Well, everything that I've seen that's really been reported has indicated that it was former President Trump's decision whether or not to enact the National Guard and to have the National Guard come in. I'm in Maryland, right? Our governor at that time, Larry Hogan, had the Maryland National Guard on the border, right? On the border, absolutely, on the border of DC, just waiting for the phone call to say, let them in so they can go and help. And former President Trump refused to do the phone call. Everything inside that inner circle, from the Trump inner circle, all says that they were begging him to make the phone call to ask for the help so that the National Guard could come in. They could not come in without the request of the commander-in-chief. And the commander-in-chief did not make that request, nor would he allow that request to be made to stop those that were there. So,
but he had already made the request and he had been turned down for 10,000.
Yeah, my understanding, and I'd have to go back and take a look at it. My understanding is that they were there and ready, but not deployed because he did not make the request to deploy them.
See, that's where the confusion comes in, because I'm trying to find out what's true, what's not true. I do know that Mitch McConnell's in charge of the police, so there was a failure there. Nancy Pelosi is in charge of the Hill. There was a failure there, and they've not been held to account. There are also reports that then President Trump asked for 10,000 National Guard in advance of this. Because remember, Steve Bannon said things are going to get wild. It is confusing. Well, you tell me.
You're also dealing with separate policing, institutions. If you're dealing with the National Guard, that's when you're dealing more with the presidency than you are with McConnell or Pelosi or anything like that. If you're dealing with the Capitol Police, then that's a whole separate entity and the control of the Capitol Police. And of course, the last section is the DC Metropolitan Police, which would be under the control of the mayor, however, would not have the authority to go into the Capitol unless unless help is requested from them. So those are the layers that are there. The only way that the DC Metropolitan Police could get involved is if there's a request from the Capitol Police for DC Metropolitan to get involved. So if the Capitol Police, have not made that request, then DC Metropolitan is not going to get involved. The National Guard is only going in at the request of the presidency. He is the president. He's got to make that request from the National Guard. So, so there are multiple layers that's there. I'm not 100% certain with regards to the Speaker of the House and her control over the Capitol Police versus the president.
No, that's Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell.
Right, over the president of the Senate.
Yeah.
The comparison is there.
Well, there was a gentleman who came out. In fact, I wanted to get him on the show because that was a question that was raised. And, these are some of the white hot questions that are not asked because, we're trying to indict one person instead of looking at a system failure. And, quite frankly, you can never disconnect political intentions from that because this was a bad look for him ultimately. Right. And I'm not covering for anyone. I just think that the chaos psychologically that had such a negative impact upon the American public because it's frightening. It was just like with the day that they were on the floor arguing whether they were going to put Clinton out of office. It was a sad day for America because it was chaotic and you felt like your government was out of control, which is frightening because Americans are not accustomed to that kind of instability.
Right.
I mean, were you going to say something? I was going to ask Dwight. I mean, Dwight, what are your thoughts? Because we've also, Attorney Gerald Jones had Ray McGovern on, the former CIA.
Well, these decisions have.
And he was the one who gave us a lot of this background information.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court decision today will have more to do with the CIA than the National Guard. I mean, the real power and threat of international violation comes from on the international side, where the classified information is. The information is so classified that they don't want nobody to see exactly what they're doing and who they're doing it to. That's where the threat is. Suppose they say that the president has no immunity for the decisions he makes in terms of unjust wars. Well, that means that people that sue him now have access to the classified information that they use to execute those insurrections or those riots. The CIA does not create riots in Washington per se, but they create riots everywhere else in the world. And they are set up to overthrow, in many cases, legal governments. And so now what roles does the president play in that, and who is liable for those decisions? When you look at somebody like Allende in Chile, whose only crime was he wanted to nationalize the people's resources so the people themselves could benefit. But as Santita said, it ran direct in contrast to the national oil company or AT&T international phone companies, or those companies which already control those resources and benefited from the country's resources. Well, when a Kissinger and a Nixon decide to overthrow an existing democratic government, then are they immune from those decisions? Or are they liable and responsible for those decisions? And can the descendants of those people who got killed or the new governments, can they then sue America as a republic for instigating that kind of violence on their people? Or can they do the people who made the decision, the president, secretary of state, are they personally responsible and liable for having made those decisions? That's where the real danger is, when you don't give a president that level of immunity. And so in many cases, what happened in Washington is going to be a side with the president's going to be a sidebar. That's why I say that should have been covered by impeachment. But the real threat is at the international level. and the president have immunity for those decisions that they make.
Because that is the discussion that's being made. There are two comments that I'd like for you to speak to. First, this is for you, Daryl Jones, Attorney Jones. Robert Williams said they give Trump immunity. A whole lot of people will think they're above the law, and chaos and anarchy will be in effect. Stay tuned. Look what's happening now with the cities right now. And you're saying that we got to course correct because this is not just about former President Trump. This is about presidents past, present, and future. Well, what do you say if they give, because would they be giving Trump immunity or all presidents immunity, Attorney Jones?
Well, they can't give immunity to just one president. What they would be doing, whatever decision they make will be setting the stage for all presidents, for anyone that holds the office of the presidency of the United States. They will, be held to the same standards, be given the same rights, the same responsibilities, and the same privileges as to whatever decision that the Supreme Court is about to decide. So it's not just for former President Trump. It will be for whoever holds the office of the presidency of the United States. And one of the things that Dwight laid out that I think really brilliantly lays it out is that when we're dealing here and what we're dealing with here, while I phrase it with regards to the transfer of power here in the United States and the insurrection that occurred to try to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power here in the United States, he's absolutely correct that in a much broader viewing of this, the question is, can a sitting president, while he is still the president of the United States, interfere with any election? And is there criminal immunity? Is there criminal liability that's there if he does? If he does it within the United States to the United States government, how does that differ from doing it in, I think the example that Dwight lifted up was Chile, doing it in another country? Is there a difference? Does it make a difference? Are you splitting hairs of a baby because if you're interfering intentionally with an election illegally? Shouldn't you simply be open to prosecution for it? That is, I think, part of the broader question that the Supreme Court will be determining, which is probably part of the reason why I suspect they're going to punt it to a hearing, to say the trial court has to make a hearing to figure out whether or not the alleged criminal conduct, fits within the scope of what they're going to call the presidential immunity.
If they punt it to a hearing, does it go back to the Supreme Court?
It potentially could. If they punt it to a hearing, it goes to the trial level court, back to Judge Chutkan, and then it could go through the appeal process from there. If it's decided against former President Trump, as I believe Judge Chutkan probably would, they could then take the appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals and then bear back to the U.S. Supreme Court for the determination of whether or not Judge Chutkan did the correct analysis and whether or not the action was within or without the scope of the president's immunity.
He could be president, and all this is happening, right?
He in all likelihood, if he wins the election, the trial would not occur before this election happens. What
will that be like? Chaparral wants to know from you, Dwight, and feel free to weigh in after he does, Attorney Jones, because Chaparral wants to hear from you too. I'm gonna give her your number so she can call you and give you the business. She said, but Dwight, the difference is this. In this case, Trump is asking for immunity for overthrowing his own government, not that of another country. If they give him any sort of immunity, she says, in this case, we will become a lawless country. And she said, Dwight, you keep talking about international immunity. Trump is asking for domestic immunity, and the Supreme Court needs to make this differentiation.
And that's why, Chaparral, I'm saying that will be covered by impeachment. Is that in the impeachment process, it gives the Congress the right to examine whether somebody has violated his oath of office on domestic issues. And so they will say that he's not above the law, but that law has to be dealt with by impeachment. so that they can protect themselves on the international side. Because if they make too many determinations about immunity, again, you run the risk of Hawaii wanting to pull out of the union because they were overthrown and annexed, unlawfully. You run the same situation with the Philippines and all of the damage that Roosevelt did when he was the president. People are going to be looking for retribution on those issues. And so, yeah, he did try to overthrow his own government. But again, that would be covered by, they would say, if that's the case, then the responsibility of Congress is to impeach him and put him out of office, and if necessary, to arrest him. But that should lay with the Congress, not with the Supreme Court.
I wanted to bring this before your attention, Attorney Darrell Jones, and yours, Dwight McKee. Paul Jay, who is an award-winning filmmaker. Perhaps you've heard of him. He's a documentarian. I remember several years ago in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, he wrote on the analysis news, which is his own news aggregation site, a piece called, quote, "Trump should be charged with sedition and treason, and McConnell's role should be investigated." He continued, "While the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump has focused on his actions that day, January 6th, there's been minimal scrutiny of the reasons and motives behind allowing protesters to get into the Capitol and the broader goals in the first place." He continued, quote, "Did Mitch McConnell, as majority leader of the Senate and the person who is ultimately responsible for the Capitol Hill police, deliberately allow the protesters into the Capitol buildings? Did he know the rioters intended to storm the buildings and create as much mayhem and violence as they did?" He continued, "There's little doubt that McConnell knew what was coming and did not take action to prevent the buildings from being breached by the mob's organized leaders. There must be a serious and transparent investigation into what led up to the events of January 6th. Instead, the Democratic Party and the majority of the media are focused on what Trump did that day." He continued, "Here's some of what we know about the events leading up to January 6th. I'm sure that this is only the tip of the iceberg as to what went on behind the scenes, but there's enough in the public record to demand a special investigation. On September 17th, 6 weeks before the election, Steve Bannon was on Tucker Carlson's show and called for war starting on November 4th. After the Democrats steal the elections, you remember Steve Bannon said that they were going to steal the elections. Okay. And of course, we all know that this is something that Tucker Carlson pushed. The Sergeant of Arms of the Senate has primary oversight of the Capitol Hill police, and he reports to Mitch McConnell, Senator McConnell. Why didn't they insist on a proper security perimeter? It could have been made up of National Guard and or regional police, and on and on and on and on and on. And I mean, and as I was reading his analysis several years ago, those of us, went to college in Washington, you lived there, you, as this big, brilliant lawyer, you testified on the Hill. When I was up on the Hill regularly more than 30 years ago, you couldn't move for security. And after September 11th, it was really shut down. You used to be able to drive in front of the White House. That is no longer the case. So in these last 3 minutes here, I'd like for you and Dwight, a couple of minutes apiece for each of you, to kind of help us to see what we see. And I promise you, Attorney Jones, I'll send you that information so that we can revisit that. Because when we had Ray McGovern on, the CIA officer who used to brief the president, he was the first person the president saw every day to get a briefing. He gave us that kind of information. He said, "I'm no longer active CIA." He said, "But this is what they've been telling me." So there are a whole lot of layers to this. And it seems like instead of looking at what really happened that day and who was responsible, we want to look at one person and the politics of it, instead of looking at, if you want to look at a potential overthrow of the government, look at the whole thing, Darrell. Look at it all. 2 minutes for you.
Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty much in agreement with what Paul has laid out. Yeah, I think that it is extremely important that as a citizen, right, just for the understanding of what went on, that there be an in-depth investigation that would occur. The problem is you're going to have the government investigating the government, and that generally doesn't turn out too well. I agree with him as well as that, we know that there were tours that were being given as everything was being set up for this January 6th, prior to January 6th, that tours were given for people to have access to areas that ordinarily they wouldn't have access to. And, some of the folks that came into the Capitol, they just had a little too much knowledge with regards to where tunnels lead. If you and Santita, this, if you ever been part and around and in the tunnels in the Capitol, it's extremely confusing.
You don't
what
know where
tunnel
you're
goes.
going.
You have no idea.
Years.
Right. I mean, you would really have to be well aware and of where these tunnels are going in order to understand how to get to all these various areas. So, I'm in agreement with him that there's a lot more that's there that we have not been told about, been informed about. And I think it's important not only for the citizens to know about it, but for the police and the law enforcement itself to be able to understand what went on in order to prevent any type of future activity from this from happening again. So I'm in agreement with him that I think that that's important. The other part that people have not really focused on has been this Secret Service piece that's there. We know that there were text messages and emails that were going around that were part of the coming through the White House coffers and stuff that disappeared, that were erased. And we know that you don't erase emails, you don't erase text messages. They're not forever gone. But that information has not been disclosed. That information, no one, to our knowledge, has gone after to find out what exactly, who knows what and when, and who's been involved in this, because there are all kinds of questions that layer in there as well, Santita. So I'm all with Paul J. I think there's a lot more that's to this, and I think it's that they owe it to our government to be able to do a deeper dive and to find out what all has gone on and who knew what and when they knew it. Because right now they are just focused on the former president, and there are a lot more players that appear to be getting away with stuff.
I just want to know. I think that's fair. I mean, it's not about him. To me, this is about the process, not just a president. It's about the presidency and about the whole process, because I don't want to see that happen again. Dwight McKee, I only have 90 seconds for you, but you got him.
Well, I think that you make a mistake when you focus on this event with the president on the 10th, on the 6th of January. When you open up this kind of process, you open it up historically and internationally. And so when you're dealing with America, again, which is a criminal enterprise, you run every risk from being, sued by Cuba for what happened there to the 5 civilized tribes suing you to take back Mississippi and Georgia and those lands which were stolen from them with the March of Tears. I mean, they have treaties and the standings and deals that they cut that the government violated, that now you can go back and revisit and say that the government is liable for what they did to us, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, what happened at Wounded Knee. Again, you're dealing with a country that in and of itself is a criminal enterprise. And so everything then becomes up for negotiation and up for discussion.
Well, you know what, everybody, stay tuned. We will, we'll revisit this. Daryl, get on up. Well, you're always up early anyway, because you've already gotten your exercise in. We'll revisit this tomorrow because, I'm going to see if I can get in touch with Paul J., but I'm going to send you this information because I think we need to look at who was in charge of what. I mean, if we're going to examine it, examine the whole thing. See, for me, this is not personal. This is about process. So coming up, let's talk about Julian Assange. He is free, but he also had to destroy a lot of evidence that he collected. So what really happened here? And Kevin Gosztola will tell us in the second half of the next hour that He was guilty of journalism. Chip Gibbons was in the court with him from Defending Rights and Dissent. So we're going to hear from him and to see how all of this played out and what is ahead for journalism. Sending you so much love, Attorney Daryl Jones, Dwight McKee. God bless you, everybody. Stay tuned, everybody. Go to the second link for the second hour. They love hearing you speak, John Holloman. They love hearing you and Dwight speak. So this is great. I've got two of the most brilliant minds I know working with me this morning. You make my job easy. I love it. Sending you all so much love. Second hour, everybody. Let's talk about Julian Assange. What really happened here? What really happened? Click that second hour link. I'll be back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Okay. All right.